bienvenidos y bienvenidas a esta tercera edición de los talleres. Bienvenidos a la central de diseño aquí en Matadero, aunque sea una bienvenida extraña. En vídeo estamos aquí y estaréis también muy pronto aquí también participando poniendo en práctica toda esta iniciativa. Yo soy Anso, soy desde hace muy poquito presidente de la Asociación de Diseñadores de Madrid. Me hace especial ilusión esta iniciativa porque reúne un poco pues toda esta vocación, ¿no? La vocación de compartir el diseño, la vocación de poner en práctica cosas y sobre todo la de promover el futuro del diseño, ¿no? Y involucrar a todas las escuelas y a un montón de gente en repensar nuevas posibilidades a través del diseño, que al final no es un fin en sí mismo, sino un medio para conseguir cosas. Es para nosotros un placer organizar esto y a pesar de las circunstancias tratar de sacar lo máximo partido a esta oportunidad de reunir a todas las escuelas colaboradoras, que para nosotros es como la base y el futuro de DIMAD, pero no solo de DIMAD, sino de la práctica del diseño. Y está conmigo también Rosa, directora artística de Matadero.
Me pasas la palabra.
Sí.
Pues muchas gracias, Sancho. Bueno, felicidades, ¿no? Como dicen en inglés, es de brand new president de esta asociación con la que Matadero lleva pues una trayectoria ya conjunta, ¿no? Y tenemos proyectos en común, pero este nos hace especialmente ilusión a todos, es verdad, porque el trabajo con las universidades, con las escuelas de diseño, es para nosotros una oportunidad de acercar nuestros contenidos con vosotros, ¿no? Y bueno, trabajar en esta interdisciplinaridad que este año hemos enfocado mucho hacia la cultura digital, ¿no? A través de este taller que se llama Hay otros mundos virtuales, ¿no? Y que hemos creado con un motivo. Este es el tercer año que hacemos esta colaboración. Los talleres anteriores estaban muy vinculados a otro proyecto que tenemos que se llama el Instituto Mutante de Narrativas Ambientales. Y este año pues tenemos un proyecto que iniciamos en el 2020 que crece y crece, que se llama el Planet LEV Matadero, que es un entorno virtual que hemos hecho pues con la dirección de LEV, de este laboratorio de electrónica visual, con el que hacemos un festival anual. Y este proyecto pues es un entorno que nos gusta especialmente porque es un espacio para la cultura digital, pero no de difusión ni de comunicación, sino un espacio nativo donde crear y donde los artistas pues van a tener que enfrentarse, ¿no? A una serie de condicionantes que me estoy adelantando y os lo veréis enseguida, ¿no? De qué estamos hablando. Bueno, este taller tiene dos protagonistas, los Children of Cyberspace, los niños del ciberespacio, que es un grupo muy joven y de muchos lugares diferentes, del Líbano, de Rumanía, y son totalmente interplanetarios, y ellos son los autores de este planeta LEV, y uno de los talleres va a ser en relación a este contenido. Y el segundo taller es de Carlos Martorell. Los dos talleres van a acompañar toda la semana y el sábado que viene vamos a tener pues un momento de conexión y de conocimiento de los resultados de los talleres, ¿no? Estamos pues eso, negociando entre lo presencial y lo digital, y los talleres se mueven en esos espacios. Pero bueno, os contamos lo que va a pasar esta tarde. Esta tarde, ahora, inmediatamente, después de un documental que se llama Navegando Píxeles, que es de Mind the Film, de los realizadores Mind the Film, sobre el planeta de los niños. Va a haber una charla de los Children y después a las 7 una segunda charla, también en abierto para todos vosotros, los que participáis en los talleres y los que estáis aquí acompañándonos, de Claudia Rafael, que es una artista del ámbito digital muy conocida, alemana. nosotros quizá nos despedimos, os damos otras veces las gracias. Este taller se hace en el marco del Madrid Design Festival, agradecimientos al festival, cada año participamos con más de un proyecto siempre, vamos a seguir teniendo otra programación, DIMAD y Matadero en ese marco, a final de marzo va a ser, o sea que esperemos que estéis pendientes de lo que vamos a seguir haciendo en ese marco. Le vamos a dar la palabra a Lorena Pardo, que es del equipo de DIMAD, que va a contar muy brevemente cuáles son las dinámicas de estos dos talleres. Y nos vemos todos aquí el sábado, como muy tarde. Gracias.
Hola, bienvenidos a esta edición de los talleres. Nos hace especial ilusión y rápidamente voy a pasar a contaros en qué consiste cada uno de los talleres. Vamos a tener 2 diferentes talleres a partir del día de mañana y hasta el viernes, luego el sábado pondremos en común. ¿En qué consisten los talleres? El taller de la mañana, los chicos de todas las escuelas colaboradoras de DIMAD se van a reunir para hacer un taller de escaneo 3D y fotogrametría. Con esto van a crear un entorno virtual a partir de objetos físicos y lo van a convertir en este entorno virtual en el que van a convivir los avatares que crearán los chicos que vienen al taller de la tarde. Es una creación de avatares a partir de un cubo, a partir de un diseño que ellos van a hacer aquí físicamente, y van a generar personajes a partir de cómo ellos se pueden observar, lo que pueden ver en ellos, y van a crear avatares completamente nuevos, para que luego el sábado pongamos en común los resultados de un taller y del otro y se reúnan en este mundo virtual creado por el Planet LEV en Tivoli, y la verdad es que es súper interesante. Estamos en un momento perfecto para conjugar todo lo que es lo físico con lo virtual. Y el sábado también están súper invitados a presenciar este encuentro y estar juntos, así sea virtualmente, y observar todos los resultados de los chicos en estos días. Muchísimas gracias.
Planetas. Objetos espaciales que reflejan la luz de su estrella. Incontables y misteriosos. Pueblan los sistemas y galaxias del espacio y en ocasiones del ciberespacio. Bienvenidos a Planet LEV, un planeta virtual dedicado al arte y la creatividad. En la época del confinamiento, un grupo de creativos se propuso experimentar con nuevos formatos. ¿Por qué no crear un universo paralelo para la creatividad digital sin límites? Un espacio virtual onírico poblado por seres digitales y repleto de piezas artísticas. En este documental descubriremos las maravillas virtuales que habitan Planet LEV y lo que debemos hacer para contribuir a su prosperidad llenándolo de árboles digitales y creaciones artísticas. En el punto de llegada al planeta encontramos un estanque repleto de nimis. Los nimis son las especies digitales que pueblan Planet LEV. De formas escultóricas, fueron diseñadas por Children of Cyberspace, autores de este mundo virtual. Alrededor del estanque, situado al pie del depósito de agua del Centro Cultural Matadero Madrid, se concentra también la fauna de este ecosistema, los avatares. Seres flotantes esenciales para la navegación y la experiencia en primera persona. La tortuga Cura Cura, nuestro avatar en modo navegador. Y la evolucionada medusa, un espécimen capaz de teletransportarnos, será nuestro avatar para gafas de realidad virtual. Cuando durante la exploración del planeta avistemos a cualquier otro ejemplar, sabremos que detrás de cada uno existe otra presencia humana, otro explorador remoto conectado desde algún lugar de la lejana Tierra. Subiendo las escaleras, iniciamos la exploración de Terrain, el espacio de mayor extensión del planeta. Aunque desértico a primera vista, la geografía de Planet LEV esconde misteriosas conexiones con el paisaje asturiano, como por ejemplo la forma inconfundible del icónico picón de la playa de Buelna, materializado aquí en carne de píxel. Al sur del Terrain, donde el horizonte se visualiza entre acantilados y cuevas, se alza Spin, una escultura sonora en forma de 2 anillos monumentales. Un espacio de meditación creado por el artista visual Lucas Gutiérrez y el compositor Robert Lippock. El lugar perfecto para experimentar con la escucha a diferentes alturas y en diferentes direcciones. El oriente de Planet LEV combina los picos más altos y los acantilados más misteriosos. Una bóveda translúcida nos da la bienvenida. Es una cúpula perfectamente adaptada a un mundo virtual. Un planetario evolucionado donde las proyecciones para domo se aprecian tanto desde dentro como desde fuera. Spheral Cluster de Boris Divida nos recibe con una experiencia de texturas y formas geométricas. Una reflexión sobre el poder de la sincronía. Estos paisajes escarpados esconden leyendas y misterios de épocas futuras. En las profundidades de los acantilados vive una extraordinaria criatura de 4 brazos, Tentacle Queen, quizás el ser más mitológico de Planet LEV. Obra del dúo Fractal Fantasy, nos atrae hacia su caverna digital con cantos futuristas. Según avanzamos por el desfiladero, la mitología digital da paso a la leyenda distópica. Son pocos los que se aventuran a subir las escaleras hacia el templo de Ghost Island. Estatuas abandonadas de perros callejeros flanquean este vestigio en ruinas. Una pagoda rodeada de memorias imaginadas, basada en calles y templos terrestres escaneados en 3D. Obra de Naxcor Meuco. Para salir de un espacio tan profundo, es liberador poder echar el vuelo. Aunque pronto nos damos cuenta de que nuestra altura nunca superará a la magnitud de la tridimensionalidad abstracta de datos. Esta estructura, hecha de código, es Heterotopis. Trabajo colaborativo del compositor Elías Merino y el diseñador Sergio Millán. Un espacio generativo que evoluciona y nos permite experimentar con nuestra percepción de las dimensiones. Un punto óptimo para la observación de esta pieza es la cima poblada por o reorrocks. Inspiradas en las construcciones asturianas, estas rocas virtuales contemplan el paso del tiempo y el espectáculo de la continua profusión escultórica de datos. Al norte del planeta vive el bosque, un paraje habitado por árboles que se alimentan de vibraciones sónicas. Son prueba fundamental de que la música está viva en el planeta. Entre sus ramas, Planet LEV ha acogido conciertos en streaming de artistas internacionales que han emitido su música en directo. Para asegurar niveles continuos de creatividad sónica fuera de horarios de conciertos, la artista asturiana Ocre, a cargo de la banda sonora de los paisajes del planeta, ha realizado una pieza que incluye sonidos de la NASA. Esta simbiosis digital entre música y árboles requiere de la ayuda de todos. El bosque es un lugar para escuchar, del que no hay que marchar sin extender semillas por el colindante desierto. A través de la llanura azul, nos acercamos a una estructura fragmentada con un portal casi fluorescente. En la caverna interior, formas sintéticas reflejan sistemas orgánicos. Nos encontramos dentro de Concentric Core Reflector del colectivo artístico MSHR. El occidente de Planet LEV es zona de cuevas. Un entramado de grutas donde descubrir a las mónades. Una serie de cibordiosas digitales, obra de la artista Sabrina Raté. Realizadas a través del escaneado en 3D del cuerpo del artista, su existencia se debe a la deconstrucción y recontextualización digital. Su subjetividad refleja el espejo fragmentado de una realidad mayor. Los reflejos de otras realidades encuentran su lugar esencial en el core corazón de Planet LEV. Con acceso directo desde la puerta live en el hall, llegamos a un escenario dedicado a la música en directo y las proyecciones de origen terrícola. Un punto de encuentro alrededor de una pantalla en 2D, tributo a la época bidimensional del procesamiento de datos. Hay quien compara Planet LEV con un sueño del ciberespacio. En sus entrañas ebulle un magma de píxeles y hercios. La experimentación y creatividad digital no solo constituyen su materia, sino que también orbitan su atmósfera. Orbit es un espacio expositivo para acoger obras realizadas tanto por creadores invitados como por participantes de talleres Planet LEV. Una plataforma para garantizar que la creatividad del universo LEV siga en expansión. Ecosystems es la exposición del artista Shoy. Nuevas formas de vida en un terrario virtual. Una colección de collage 3D basados en el escaneo de vegetación terrestre. Una exposición que hace del ciberespacio un lugar más bello y nos recuerda la importancia que tiene defender una mejor cultura para tener un mejor planeta.
Hi, welcome everyone. First of all, thank you so much for having us tonight. We're really happy to be able to share all the secrets and insights behind this incredible project, Planet LEV. We want to especially thank Matadero as well as the whole LEV crew with which we had the chance to work and to share this incredible experience. So I'm Tiffany Attali, one of the Children of Cyberspace.
And I'm Eleanor Audi, also part of Children of Cyberspace.
So let us tell you a little bit more about Children of Cyberspace. It's a techno-utopian universe brought online in confinement as an extension of the physical world. What started as an empty ground grew into a digital playground for artists from all around the world to come together and test new ideas. The collective behind Children of Cyberspace is composed of architects, programmers, graphic designers, and game developers that see themselves as virtual scenographers. Their romantic view of technology is an echo of digital utopists of the past. Our process combines an acute approach to virtual spatial design with contemporary theories of user perception. Building on the constructive and chaotic energy of the internet, Children of Cyberspace strive to create creative realms for artists to express themselves freely. So, as we said, the adventure of Children of Cyberspace started almost a year ago from now, when this crazy time, the pandemic, started. We found out each other without any spaces to meet up, to show our work. And as digital artists, we really felt that there were here an opportunity to create a space in cyberspace in order to keep exchanging. So about what we do, what we've been doing so far within this crazy year, we started with a gallery in the cloud and doing like VR and online art exhibition. And right now we're working on a video game project in collaboration with the DSL collection, so an art collector. The game is gonna include some of his piece, but this is a secret. So the very first exhibition was a gallery in the cloud, and within a month, like from day one of the very first lockdown, we started to activate ourselves, contact our friend artists and other artists that we didn't know, and we managed to gather a team of 15 amazing creators that proposed 3D artworks, animated sound pieces, and we were very happy after 1 month being in our living room to be able to share this gallery opening all together. And leading to that, our dear friends from the Château Éphémère asked us to create a space where they could show some work of their invited artists, sound artists. So this is really where we started to experiment with this notion of virtual scenography and creating a space that accommodates some sound pieces in particular. But today we're here to talk about Planet LEV. So Planet LEV is this virtual playground where a lot of artists and amazing creators have had the chance to build together this crazy universe.
So at the very beginning, when we had to conceive of Planet LEV, we thought of 3 different types of spaces, because what we had done before with our digital playground was to have a platform and hosted mainly sculptural work and audio work, but in a sort of platform way. Here we wanted to have live performances as well as installations and more ephemeral and temporary exhibition. So we thought of this space as a planet with a heart. And at the heart of it would be the live performances, which are in the core. Then there is the ground of the planet, the terrain. And this is where we would have the artworks installation that would be more permanent, or that at least would be experienced during the event. And the orbit with all the satellite platforms could be more changeable with temporary exhibition and open to different types of works and experimentations. So the terrain is where we had we worked with Planet LEV with the curation of artists. And so we had to develop strategies of exhibitions and exploration. So we thought about it with sort of artistic oasis within the terrain. This is a map that will go further in detail later, but we divided the planet in several types of topographies so that they could host different types of works. That's a few screenshots of the planet that you saw a documentary about, but lots of bioluminescent species live there because it's in permanent sunset mode. And that's a panoramic view of the landscape of the blue planet. The core, so the heart of the planet where live performance is, was initially thought as almost a dome space with a central object on which performance would be projected, visuals that would be audio reactive, and we thought that the audience could turn into a little light as they came into the space. And the strategy in order to have these live performances would be that we would take the visuals from the artist and map it onto geometries that would be in the core. So that would be a central rock with the spherical setup on the inside. And that would be live streamed. And how we thought that could be happening in the planet would be that there would be cracks in the ground leading to the core that the user would be traveling in order to reach the heart of the planet where the vibrations are coming from. So this was the initial idea for within the cracks, that we would be traveling into the sort of soil of the planet to get to the vibrations, to get to the live area. Later, that had to be sort of thought about differently for technical reasons. And that is a performance of Boris Divider. So initially, the performance was going to be hosted into the sphere, but as we evolved, we thought it'd be also great to have it projected on the cliffs. So in the landscape, we have mountains and cliffs, and in the end, that performance was projection mapped onto a mountain. Here you see a Medusa. So the Medusa is a VR audience member, and another one appearing just now. So the planet, at the core of the planet is the fact that it's a shareable experience and it's multiplayer. So you could have at the same time several VR audience members as well as online people coming to visit the planet, and they would all be in the same space. So share the same space of the performance.
And about the orbit, so this is the third space of Planet LEV after the terrain and the core. In the orbit, currently there is a temporary exhibition that I will talk on the next slide, and it's meant to host as well experiments from different workshops that are conducted by LEV through this system of uploading. So where the participant could bring their work in the universe through this platform. And this installation ecosystem from Shoeg was inaugurated for the last edition of LEV Christmas. He's doing a workshop. He's going to be doing a workshop in the next few days as well about 3D scannings. And this exhibition are some piece of his own that depicts those virtual natural wonders. And in this particular environment, we had the choice of having the pieces standing in space, really floating, like in order to highlight their presence. So there is almost no context yet, like you're still very in a spacey environment.
So when we wanted to develop the planet, we were very lucky to have the chance to come to Asturias. One, because we met the fabulous team of the LEV Festival. and 2, because we discovered the landscape of Asturias, which we know they want to keep secret, so they like to not have too many people rush there when people find out about it. One of our fascination was that we became absolute rock geeks. There were way too many rock stimulations in Asturias, from sort of rocks floating on the sea, rocks floating on the beach, rock formations all along the coasts, that became a really important source of inspiration for us when we developed the different assets for the planet. So this is a breadth of work, and as you saw in the documentary, we selected a few iconic landmark rocks. So on the left, you have what we were told was called the Perseus rock, and on the right, the Sunset rock, which we call the Natural rock. And these two iconic rocks were then reproduced within the planet as landmarks in the landscape of Planet LEV. Same with so as we were traveling on the roads and being taken around by the team, we saw these, the Oreo houses, which are landmark in the landscape of Asturias and were used for agriculture and storing goods. And we just thought they looked like absolutely fabulous characters on their sort of 4 legs, ready to start walking on the hills. And that kind of led us to develop the principle of Oreo rocks. So imagining that in a maybe previous time or future time, rocks could be on stilts and could start walking. So we developed the Oreo rocks with the thin elongated legs after a few variations of volume trials. And these rocks were then placed in the landscape in the area that we call the cliffs, sort of perched in different places with their high legs. Some of them sort of dug in the ground and were more buried than others.
So in order to help the user navigate and discover every little corner of the planet, we used some tricks of landscape design, but virtually. So again, taking inspiration of Asturias landscape, we've been developing a strategy to trace paths and highlight them on the ground through different colors or sometimes topography. As well, along the path, we scattered the landscape with oases, pockets of virtual biodiversity, where you can get lost and attract curiosity. And finally, like those limitation between different elements really inspired us. So as you can see, like those finger-like traces that the water draws on the sand, and that creates like those gradient of colors were reproduced in the virtual landscape of Planet LEV.
In some of the places we visited, we encountered some of this sort of corridor beaches, really, where you're between 2 huge cliffs and you have a tunnel of sea leading to the open sea. And that was quite extraordinary to experience. And we thought that'd be a great place to reproduce in the planet, both as a sort of narrow corridor before leading to an open space, which could sort of lead to that change of emotion, but also as a way of framing moments that you could just get a glimpse as you're moving from one place to another of an artwork at the end of the corridor. Similar inspiration we got from going to several places was the caves. And we found lots of caves in Asturias that were sort of natural formation, either digged down by the sea. And that was sort of a really beautiful moment where you would have a framing, the cave became a portal where you could frame another space behind the opening. And that we used as well as a tool in the planet in several places. And something that's very special that we were told about and that we kind of had the chance to go see as well is the bufones, which I think are quite specific to the region of Asturias, which is in fact a place where the sea kind of enters the rock and creates this huge kind of sound and steam sort of water projection. And the rhythm of it sort of creates a form of breathing. So we were absolutely fascinated by this sort of breathing of the sea through the rocks and the vibration and the sound of it. And although we could not reproduce it, you know, it would have never been as extraordinary as the real, we did think that the geometry of it was quite impressive, to imagine a rock formation that has a crater that's open to the sky. And that could become a very interesting tool to develop for exploration. So we'll show you later some of the bufones explorations. Textures and patterns were as well something that we got obsessed with. There are several places in Asturias that we visited that have very interesting geological formations. And so with our great guides, we discovered these stratas of rocks, which we really wanted to incorporate in the planet's ground. And so these photographs became the base for the concept design, where we derived some views. So the photo on the left you can see is a collage from photographs we took when we were there and imagining it as a sort of imagination space. And as we started 3D modeling, we realized that we made it a little bit more minimal, so that the visual language wouldn't be too present either. In fact, if the 3D environment was too textured, we might start to have collisions with the artwork. And so it was a sort of conscious decision to make it slightly less textured as you go around in the 3D world. The photos we took on our exploration were very key to building up the concepts for the planet. And this, you can see some of the textures that we took from the beach and the rocks, and the line underneath it is actually our photos with just the saturation boosted. So they're not fake colors, they're just the colors that the elements have, but boosted. And we just started thinking, that's insane. We could have a really insane color palette in the planet. And then we composed with these photographs of real places, started to compose moments that could be reproduced on the planet, all based on actual places we saw, be it caves or rocks or sort of vegetation, plants. And as sort of iteration and sort of prototyping and testing, we started to use our textures, use our photographs directly onto 3D assets. But for the same reason as before, we thought that was too heavy for language in a place that was going to host artworks. So we picked our color palettes from photographs of the place and came up with some color ranges that could be used throughout the planet. And so that's sort of going one step further from the postcards, from the photographs, was to start to model bits of the bufones, the caves, the corridors, and here incorporating a color palette that was still slightly too much for being able to host other people's works as well.
So, as you might have noticed already, like inside the planet, we have incredible vegetation growing. And again, this vegetation is inspired by species that you can find in Asturias, in particular, the incredible eucalyptus forest with those very linear, vertical, elongated trees that we transformed into the diva trees. We'll talk about that later. Then underwater creatures and species that gave birth to the nimis, a family of plants that live inside Planet LEV, as well as getting inspiration from desert vegetation and those very, very, very special type of like leaves and flowers.
So space for exhibition. The space Planet LEV was sort of a planet with its own ecosystem, but it has to be designed to host specific types of works, as we discussed earlier. So here we had to go with landscape design and virtual scenography to really make a space for the artwork. So this was the master plan that was derived from the outline of Asturias itself, where we created different zones with different geology. So we have the birth where the audience will arrive, which is the Matadero zone, where the jellyfish and the turtle are born. And then we have the Bufones zone, which was very important for us to have a semi-enclosed space, but still with an opening to the sky. The hill zone, which would be these very tall cliffs, as you can see on Asturias coast, open air, but also with cave opportunities to have semi-enclosed spaces. And the beach zone, which would be a more flatland, open area for more sculptural, large pieces of work that could be seen from a distance or from several points of view. The oases were these areas where the artwork would be exhibited, and we had to come up with strategies when the viewer would approach the artwork. Some pieces needed specific requirements like changes of colors or changes of contrast, etc. So having them in oasis allowed us to have a more customized and personalized approach to the approach of the artwork. And the oasis became the moment that were really embedded in the landscape in different levels.
So talking about strategy of artwork integration, this sheet was kind of the rules of the game to exchange with the artists. So starting with placement, we asked them if they wanted to have their piece standalone or scattered in the landscape or moving around. And depending on that choice, that would already indicate in which zone the artwork would stand. Then about kinetics, movement, they had the choice of either doing procedural effects, so animation and effects built through code, some simulation, or some animation. Those animation, for example, were part of the interaction system. They had the choice either to have element being activated when the avatar would touch an object or when they would approach and get in a specific range. And that was applied as well, like for the sound, which was a very, very important part of the experiment. The sound in Planet LEV is spatialized and three-dimensional. So when you approach an artwork, you start to hear its music. It sounds like vibrating progressively and getting louder and louder and louder as you get closer. You can also hear from which direction it's coming and look around and look behind you, hear if it comes from your left or your right. So now we're gonna go into more detail and present each zone of the terrain, starting with the beach that was designed as a big open space that would accommodate big, massive, gigantic sculptural pieces. And the first one we want to show you is the piece by MSHR. So this kind of pixel ruins that is half nested in the landscape. And as you approach it, you're dragged by this green light that is an actual gate. You might have noticed that when you came really close, the saturation and everything become really dark. And they used an amazing trick here. They used a one-way door. So the moment you would enter the sculpture, you would end up in this corridor and get the chance to experience every one of those micro sculptures that had their own soundtrack. Another piece on the other side of the beach is Spin by Robert Lepoc and Lucas Gutierrez. So what's very interesting about this piece is that it's meant to be enjoyed at a different distance. So from afar, you really see those two floating rings spinning in opposite direction. But when you get up close, you actually discover some incredibly crafted texture, a skin of almost like reptile, and with crazy luminosity and reflection. And as you can see, there were some small spheres that were the sound sources. So if you would stand in the bottom of the sculpture, the sound source would approach you and get closer and closer and spin, and the sound would mix in a unique way every time you would come close.
And the cliffs, so the cliff areas were very, very tall walls. So here you can see the turtle is kind of floating midway. In reality, if you were in VR, you'd be on the ground going into the sort of labyrinth cliff area. And these cliffs were designed in a way to create a pocket space, which would shield the artwork on all sides from the rest of the planet and create a sort of an intimacy zone where, again, you could float in from the top or access it from the bottom through these different gaps within the cliff walls. And that's a place where we put the installation of Elias Merino and Sergio Milan, where you could come, the turtle would approach from the top, and that piece is it's generative. So as you approach, again, the piece would start to appear when your avatar is close to it. And this procedural sculpture is also textured procedurally in a way where it would be changing every time you came. If you came from the top or the bottom, if you came from the bottom, you'd be immersed in it when you looked up. And when you came from the top, you could go within that geometry that's being created as you float around. The piece is called Heterotopy. And it was also for the implementation of that piece, it was quite a challenge technically to make the timings work right with the different places where the avatar could come in. But it was a truly immersive and incredible experience as an artwork. Fractal Fantasy and their Tentacle Queen was also niched within the cliffs. And this was a performative sculpture that would react as you came in. And it was really funny to see when people would experience it in VR. A lot of them would kind of jump when they got there because they wouldn't expect to find the Tentacle Queen in there. So it was a very, very fun and playful installation to have hidden in the cliffs.
So talking about pockets of intimacy, Meko Meko and Nax Corps really did a successful piece in inhabiting these pockets that was given to them. So in their artwork, you see this portal. This portal actually transports you into a different experience of their own if you cross it. What is really incredible is that we gave them a site, we gave them this specific spot in the landscape, and they expanded everywhere. They decided to populate the whole ground with a central piece, but also a series of micro sculpture, and they even went really in detail by putting this grass, which is quite incredible actually. When you are in VR and you walk on the ground, you can almost feel the grass touching your skin, and the sound really helps to feel this wind. It's a very strong sensorial experience. So the Spheral Cluster by Boris Divider came at a later stage and was inaugurated for the LEV Christmas edition. this piece was first played as a live performance and then was translated into this dome nested inside the landscape. So it's quite magical to see when you approach, almost like a bubble, that bubble of soap that whose texture like gets progressively animated with this incredible language of line. There is something so beautiful in the simplicity of the language, yet the complexity of the movement, in particular that it's sound reactive. So the visual are synchronized with the sound.
The Bufones, as I was describing before, is this place which has an above and a below. And although the cliffs were creating a pocket of intimacy, here it's more closed because the place has a roof. It has a roof with a crater to allow light to come in. So for the Bufones, we created several zones, some of them empty and with just atmospheric elements like little rocks, shimmering rocks on the ground, and some other places where we exhibited Sabrina Ratte with the monad. So the monad are 3D sculptures that are rendered in 2D compositions. And so we work together with the artist to recreate the sort of effect that she has on her 2D renders into a 3D environment. So there was a real work of integration with her sculptures to recreate the feeling of her images within a space and create an immersive space with the visuals that she produces. So scenography was very important, and playing with the light, the sort of dramatic, adding drama with the elements of the environment was very important in the Bufones.
And inside of the Bufones, we hosted one of the first live performances from Arkanoid. As you can see here, the turtles were waiting at the door of the live before it started. And as you enter in the Bufones, because the performance was music and didn't came with visuals from the artist, we came up with this scenography. So you can see here our diva trees dancing on the beat of Arkanoid sound, as well as those sound reactive rocks that would like flicker on the beat of his music. It was quite an incredible experience, this performance, as there were a lot of users. So there were a lot of turtles and jellyfishes exploring the space as Arkanoid was playing with us inside Matadero. So about living creatures inside Planet LEV, we developed a whole range of botanical species, the Arcus tripodes, the Sonitus bilbus, Taurus arma, Phlos tubae, and many others. So those specific plants that are growing inside Planet LEV are called the nimis. The nimis, believe it or not, didn't start in 3D, they started on pen on paper with watercolor. That's how we developed the concept and their crazy geometries that we then brought into a full 3D world. And they became those glowy creatures that would help the user to navigate the landscape. We went pretty far in designing the nimis. Like we even like cut through them, imagine how they would function, what kind of cells they would have, because they have a life on their own. They have like very specific properties. They react to sound and light. They're really sensitive to sound. They feed on sound. And we really imagine from a biological point of view how those creatures, how those plants would actually function. For example, the Sonitus bulbus, which has this geometry as a way to resonate. So it's mainly made of a void, so he can really absorb the sound vibration of the environment.
And here the Arcus tripodes, which was thought as a species on its own, but also together with the fauna. The Arcus tripodes is actually a sort of playground moment for the turtle and for the jellyfish, who can use it to loop around and walk beneath it. It's got arching stems and juicy fruits for the turtle to feed on as well. And the floss fluents, which live mainly in the birth areas of the jellyfish, are very key in lighting up the planets with bioluminescence. The Pitailino, yeah, we have a whole range. We have to go through the atlas with you, but yeah, it emits signals that can be only heard by the jellyfishes, the nojis, to bring them back to homeland. Another principle that was key from the beginning in the concept of the planet was that after the festival, the planet would somehow be affected by the people that came in a way or another. And the idea we had was that each person could come and had a seed. So it was kind of a secret and not everyone knew about it, but there was a function by which you could throw a seed on the ground and plant a tree. So yeah, the Omni seed has the DNA of all the Nimis. And depending on where you planted it, a different species might appear. And this is a bit of forest on the open beach where lots of trees had been planted. So you can see the bioluminescent trees. This is the kind of trees you would plant with the seed. And here we had a performance by Dot Tape that was also interactive and had multiple audio channels to play that was reactive in the environment. That's a turtle gliding through the space of the performance. So really, it's almost an ephemeral forest. But by the end of the festival, we had more trees than at the beginning. And the diva trees is a species that we introduced earlier from its inspiration of the eucalyptus tree. But we really wanted to have a form of a tree with attitude. So we thought eucalyptus are long and thin and can have long legs. And so we had a series of diva trees around the landscape, mainly in the Buffonis, actually dancing around to Arcanoid's performance. But they were a species that was, let's say, mood reactive. According to their mood, they would either move or not, depending on how they felt at this moment.
And there is one secret of Planet LEV, but for that, we're going to invite you to discover it by yourself. We've been hiding something. We have to say that Children of Cyberspace is completely obsessed with llamas. And there is one inside the planet, so we invite you to find it. So about the living beings of Planet LEV, we decided to have two avatars. The jellyfish would be the VR avatar, and the turtle for the public that would join us from their computer, from their laptop. The reason why we chose two avatars was for navigation purpose, where in VR you are stuck to the ground and you're hopping around. You needed the character that was like monodirectional, so that has like the same geometry from all sides, where the turtle really gives this sensation of flying, like of swimming in the open world and having this freedom. I said flying because in our previous experiment, this avatar was a bird. And with the context of being in lockdown when it was created, it's really the reason why we chose to have such a freedom in the way we navigate 3D space.
So the jellyfish was developed with the principle, as Tiff was saying, of omnidirection, so without a directional attitude. And the head was the glowing part where with interaction we could get a form of transcription of language. And with the hands, you'd be holding the controllers. So this was the initial sketch that got translated into the 3D avatar. the controllers was a big part of creating the interactions, and we prototyped several ways of navigation, or whether we'd be sort of walking or gliding or even flying. But through iteration, we realized that one of the most smooth way of experiences is actually to teleport. And that's with the sort of lowest risks of feeling nauseous, because as some of you might know, like in VR, it's really easy to get a bit seasick or just sick. And so, yeah, that's why we decided to have a teleporting way of navigation. And the controllers also allow you to bring up the map. So at any point in time, if you're feel like you're going nowhere, you can bring up the map and go specifically to a place to an artwork that you want to see, or just a different place you want to explore. These were the early concept models for the jellyfish, which which got evolved into its latest form. And finally, the jellyfish, which we call the Nojig, which in reality is the reverse of Gijón, which is where we had our residency. So the jellyfish, as you might have found out in the documentary, is born from the water tower of Matadero. So when you arrive on the planet, you're given birth at the feet of the Matadero tower through the tap. And this is the turtle descending into the birthplace of the Nojis, into the pond where they all live and strive. So if you came in for the first time, you'd arrive in this birthplace, and you could sort of have some time to figure out how to navigate, how to use your controller, the different functions you have on your controller before being released in the wild. So there was a bit of figuring out the interactions before you start the exploration. And the Kura.
And finally, the Kura. So this turtle avatar that you've been seeing on most of the video, floating and swimming around the space. We really wanted to have to give a lot of character to this avatar, and the way it flaps its palms and really gives this feeling of swimming. And as you can see, when there are a lot of users coming at the same time in the space, the turtle gets spawned, appear in this particular spot. So till they figure out that they actually have to use the keyboard, they kind of swim endlessly in the same spot, and then start to float and to explore the space.
Something that was interesting with the turtles is we did key in the fact that as you arrived, you'd be automatically assigned a color. And it was actually possible, it's actually possible to find your friends in the planet, to give each other meeting points, and then to go visit the place together. So here you have two turtles meeting up before they head for their visit. And, and that was quite sort of discovering new forms of interaction. We realized at the end of the performance that we were all kind of telling each other stories like, oh, did you see when this turtle was floating around, or you see this, there was a stuck jellyfish in that area, and we kind of realized like it's a different form of social interactions with these new avatars.
Because they were a feeling like that was really special. I mean, there is, because you see those avatars in space, but deep down inside, you know that behind it, there is an actual real bone and flesh human person, another human next to you. So, and you really project the character of that person in the behavior of the avatar. Like you would see like that some are like just like heading straight to their point, like, and they really know where they're going. Some are more like just like floating around, exploring, like some are really struggling, and you can also see it. And that ended up being like quite funny. So starting tomorrow, we're going to conduct a workshop to create avatars that would be inhabiting a new experimental ground of Planet LEV, hosted in Tivoli Cloud VR platform. What we want to do with this workshop is to really open up the definition of what an avatar is. So as you can see from those experiments from Universal Everything, you can really give character, human traits to some form-shaped geometries that are not necessarily human-like. And this is something that we're really looking forward to discover there's no limit, but where is the imagination of the participant of the workshop gonna go? But before that, we're gonna help them to understand what means an avatar.
So at the roots of the word avatar is actually a Hindu concept, which means to descend upon earth, and that was used for the gods. So the gods lived in heaven, and when they came to see when they came on earth, they had to have a different form than their godlike form. So the notion of avatar it's coming from that. And each god could have actually many avatars. So this is Vishnu, who is known to have 10 avatars. And these avatars could be animal, could be creatures, could be human. So in his case, he has a fish, turtle, boar, a dwarf, an angry man, a perfect man. So what was interesting at the root of the word avatar is that you can also have different forms according to your moods, or to your intentions, or to the actions you might come and do in this new world. And there's a sort of parallel with the emojis that we have today of sort of our moods and different emojis for different moods, and this new way of embodying the notion of emotion through a digital form. And the notion of incarnation is very important in this principle as well, of wearing a different skin, becoming something else. So that's Vishnu in his avatar fish, where he's half fish, half human. And the symbology of each of his elements is also charged with what he's coming to do and his intentions. So if the principle of avatar from Avatara is the incarnation of a god into a vehicle for a different world, we want to ask the students what is their vehicle to navigate Planet LEV. So if their identity or their moods, how would they choose to come and explore that world with a different body? And by body, we want to keep it very wide and very open. And these are examples of avatar on Earth, of when humans decide that they can become gods or creatures, and the type of costumes or masks they adorn in order to get there, to get to that other dimension, be it a belief or a folklore, or just another dimension in their head. So through incarnation, again, is this notion of second skin and of becoming other. And the human figure might start to be lost in that process. So you might start with a human body, but through distortion, through stretching, through change of proportion and material, you end up with a very different form. And that also goes back to old beliefs and mythological creatures, where we had before bestiaries, which we'd record creatures as we knew them, but also as we imagined them. And before we could travel, mythology and exotism were kind of the same. So you'd believe equally into a mermaid or a unicorn as you might from an elephant or a crocodile, because you couldn't so easily, validate whether they existed or not. That's also a notion we want to explore in the workshop, the notion of the beast, and the hybrid of the man with the creature and the man with the invented world. And these beasts also came about a lot with stories of navigators and travels to unknown horizons. So the sea was a very fertile ground for imagination in creatures, from the fact that the sea was an unknown horizon and people had to go and sail it and came back with stories, and these stories got distorted into this kind of sea monsters on cartography. So you can imagine this, the fascination with these tales and wonders. And this is sort of two references from different times in history where in Jules Verne, 20 Leagues Under the Sea, there are all these sea creatures that are taking over the boat. And equally today with the Netflix series Alien Worlds, we have this similar process of inventing creatures in other galaxies, in other ecosystems. So what kind of arms, like the imagination that goes into picturing these creatures that we cannot see, but we know a little bit about their environment or their possible environment. And that links to, and this is just an open door to imagination, to what might bring space travel, what are extraterrestrial life, this sort of humanoids of endless possibilities to play with what we know and what we can imagine, both in form and in colors and textures and geometries. And finally, us as humans now being able to explore cyberspace, what form and what matter are we going to use to explore cyberspace, and the notion of pixel flesh. So that now that your body isn't bones and skin anymore, it's pixel and light, and so that changes very much the type of wilderness you can explore with your minds, be it in textures and colors and just exploring the realm of the digital through this avatar making process, where you don't have to respect any rules of the physical world, and your imagination just has to unhinge totally in order to create new silhouettes. So we are very excited, and we're looking forward to discover what the students can come up with. And we hope to populate Planet LEV with lots of new, very exciting creatures. Thank you very much for being here online. And
thank you. Like, really happy to have the chance to participate in this event and to conduct this workshop. So now we're open to questions if you have any. So I can already see on YouTube, why Asturias? Why Asturias? Because this is the birthplace of the LEV Festival. This is where we got the chance to do our residency, and we were invited there to work very closely with the team of LEV. So I think this is why Asturias. Don't hesitate to type if you have any questions. So I can see another one outside of YouTube. In what platform are Planet LEV available? Or why did you choose this platform? So it's true that we haven't really specified that, but Planet LEV is accessible. You can explore it like right now or anytime on web browser. So from your computer, by connecting on planet.levfestival.com, or if you're a lucky owner of a VR headset, you can go on Steam and just find Planet LEV there, download it, and become a jellyfish.
Will we be able to create avatars in 3 days? Is another question. Well, yes, they might not look exactly as you intended them to be, but you'll have an avatar in 3 days.
we have loads of resources to make the process easy. So of course, we're not going to go too much in depth, but the point is really to be able to touch each step of the process, for us to share with the students our methodology, going from concept like hand drawings or, I don't know, brainstorming, collage, to 3D modeling, and getting a lot of help from open source and online resources. As you all know, YouTube is a gold mine for learning new stuff. And about virtual creation, you have like so many resources that are available to you. But of course, we're going to make it easy, because the point is not to knock our head with technical problems, but to be able to go completely wild and crazy with the imagination.
So I see another questions about what platforms are you going to use for Planet LEV's expansion, and how did the collaborators join or contact you? I think the question of how the collaborator joined us or contacted us is a very interesting one. Tiff, what do you think?
Yeah, here like that give us an opportunity to talk about how we actually met with the crew of LEV Festival. So it happened in a virtual world. We met in the on the first place as avatar on a virtual beach during the Laval Virtual Festival, so full on virtual. And so yeah, like this is one way that we've been starting collaboration, but of course you can check us up on Children of Cyberspace.com and you'll find our contact detail.
So do you think virtual exhibitions have a future in times of post-pandemic? Does it have to be a constantly innovative form of exhibition to attract more visitors? So I think, I mean, to try to answer to this question, there is definitely a new form that has been created with the digital exhibitions. And I believe that it will persist after the post-pandemic, simply because of the type of medium that it has enabled to display. So although it was a necessity during the pandemic to have these exhibitions virtually, it also, I mean, we at least internally as a team realized that it's just so great to be able to exhibit digital content in a digital way, which wouldn't necessarily be the case before. If you came to a gallery, you'd have a video on the wall, or you'd have to experience it through an interface, which was automatically sort of changing its format. And with this kind of new form of virtual exhibition, you can now exhibit digital artworks in a digital realm. So that's a type of future I imagine that will persist.
I don't know if there's any more questions in the room. Okay. As a collective, do you have different roles? What would you be the roles that defines yours specifically? Okay, this one is not that straightforward. It's quite a tough one, I think, because we're a pretty small team. So we have many hats depending on the crunch time. So on my side, like my specialty is mostly animation and giving life to still static creatures through movement. Eleanor?
Yes, so I'm a trained architect and technically an architect as well. But I sort of specialized in creating immersive worlds, and that was both digitally and physically. So I designed some virtual reality narratives and inflatable buildings that could be experienced for children with immersive worlds. And my role in Children of Cyberspace is sort of an immersive architect and artistic director. So we work, I mean, as Steve said, we also have several hats and we have to get our hands dirty all the time with stuff that we don't know and that we have to figure out. But we have, other amazing members in the team that are also multifunction for all the development, the modeling, and the creative side. It's really a complementary, multi-hatted team.
Another question, what would be the most difficult and the most easy part of building Planet LEV? Oh, okay, the most easy part was the excitement. Because we all came together and we really found each other with the LEV crew. Like we found some interest and a common vision that made us understood each other very quickly about the ambition of the project. So that part was actually like really smooth in setting up the objective and heading toward the common goal. About difficulties, we're not going to lie to you, they've been having a lot of them as the project was developed in a very short span of time with a crazy technical complexity and having to coordinate lots of different artists with each one of them their very specific requirements, technical challenges. So it was really custom and crafted for each artwork, both on the landscape, the scenography, how the piece would be exhibited, where it would be exhibited. There've been like hours of discussion on those topics to find the best decision for both artistic, scenography, but also technical reasons. And I don't know, difficult. I think that's more or less. That was the main difficulties.
So I see another question. How do you manage the pipeline work between the different collaborators?
Online tools and collaborative platforms, no?
Yeah, I think we're also lucky to be in a time where there are so many different types of platforms, and even our own collaboration within Children of Cyberspace started remotely. So we had to get organized with online platforms and
yeah. And after testing many, we realized that a specific crowd of cyberspace had figured it out like a while ago, which are like the gamers. So we currently use Discord, which is like a chat and video call platform originally for gamers, but that is becoming more and more used for different purposes. So this is about communication. Then about workflow, we develop our project in Unity, and we're doing that with Unity team. So basically everybody can work on the same project at the same time, and update their own part of what they work on. So again, for this, it requires good organization and communication, so we don't override and work on the same part at the same time, which would just cancel each other's work, which happened a few times before we figured it out. And yeah, file sharing, I don't know, like those are maybe not that relevant.
I think
we covered quite a bit.
Yeah. It's funny not to see everyone, or not to be in the room with everyone, but
okay, I see.
thank you.
Thank you, Lev. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Nacho, Jesus, Jorge, and everybody, and Matadero as well. We're super, super happy to share this experience with you, and hopefully it's not gonna.
We had so much fun actually during the whole process. So thank you for that.
Well, time to say goodbye. See you in cyberspace.
Ciao, ciao.